Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining me to the Things Conference today. My name is Cian O'Flaherty. I'm the CEO of SafeCility, and today we're going to be talking about our experience overcoming the challenge of retrofitting fire and life safety compliance to large estates using LoRaWAN. Very quickly, a little bit about us. We're a startup founded in 2018. We're Irish, and we provide IoT-based compliance and safety solutions for large landlords. We focus on helping them to automate manual inspection, which they're legally required to do in their estates. Our business is primarily retrofit, and we help them to reduce the costs of legally required compliance tasks like fire safety by 50%. We're currently working with clients on retrofitting our unique LoRaWAN DALI emergency lighting controller across their estates. And what we have here today is some of what we've learned about the challenges facing people in making smarter buildings and helping to solve the challenge of compliance. So the big picture is that 90% of the buildings that we live in by 2050, they're already built. So when we hit the challenges of onset of acute climate change, the aging population who are going to need more care, or the increasing demands of safety and building upkeep, we're seeing those in buildings that already exist now, but they're going to have to be future-proofed for 2050. So in a business like ours, any positive impact has to be made to the existing 90% stock if we want to help our clients to win. It's not sufficient for us to win business only for new builds if we want to support our clients who are large landlords and building owners. And with that comes a series of messy challenges. We've to support this existing building stock, and to do that, we've to overcome the challenge of retrofit. So the first challenge of retrofit is what we call competing compliances. Our landlords can handle anywhere from 1,000 to 100,000 units in a very large geography, but they face multiple challenges reporting different obligations to different stakeholders. Some of these obligations are familiar to us from the ESG rubric. They're legal, like fire safety and building safety. Perhaps they're cultural, around conditioning, like well-being or social care, or they're informal, like air quality or fit for habitation. On top of that, there's informal or risk assessment-based reporting. There's governance reporting. And what we see is that there are many ways within the business that these are tracked. And so when we say they compete, what we mean is that different groups have a different focus within the organization, and they use different tools to do their job. So compliances are always competing for attention and resources to be fulfilled. So different sets of laws govern compliance, and some are precisely legally defined. For example, testing your emergency lighting every month is a European standard under EN 50172 or 1838, ported into national laws across the European Union. Fire alarm testing is a weekly obligation, similarly Europe-wide, or BS 5839. For tenants in the UK, a gas safety check is required once per year on your boiler to make sure that it's working and functioning properly. And that again is described in law. Others are risk assessment based. So your landlord has to make a determination on the risk, say for Legionella growing in your piping system. Perhaps you're an age that would be at risk, or perhaps you're of a diminished capacity, or your building is of an age that requires regular inspection. Or perhaps the building age implies that there's a likelihood of mold giving rise to really poor health outcomes. So those informal or less formal risk assessment compliances sit alongside your legal ones, perhaps managed by a different team from the legal fire safety compliances. And others, perhaps if you're a commercial landlord, including air quality or utilization or noise levels, may in fact only be governed contractually or at an SLO level with your tenant. So these compliances may indeed be conducted by a different team, customer service or customer management, rather than the asset team or perhaps the compliance team. So when we get to the point of looking at an estate as a large landlord, we see that we already have mapped a series of compliances that might be mapped onto different parts of a business who may not communicate hugely with one another, doing their different jobs and fulfilling their obligations. But then multiply that out, these companies could have hundreds of thousands of units to look at. In the United Kingdom alone, there are 5 million social and affordable homes. More are coming on stream over the next 30 years as the landlords are forced to build and to buy existing stock to meet housing demand. There are also substantial private operators, both build to rent, commercial building, offices, retail. So the nature of compliance obligations is that they spread to maybe a small number of businesses with a very large number of buildings. So there's huge challenges of scale that come from meeting any of the compliances. So if we think about it, a compliance inspection that's required once a month happens 12 times per year. And if we have 5,000 buildings, we're looking at 60,000 inspections in an annual basis. IoT is uniquely positioned to reduce this in-person inspection without compromising safety. We now know we can build the devices and we can communicate with them in a way that improves the quality of the building, the safety of the building, and the occupant's life. But any compliance solution has to overcome the challenge of retrofit. These buildings exist, they've already been built. Additional infrastructure like rewiring a building, rewiring every building, adding a gateway or putting a dedicated discrete mesh just for one solution, all add to complexity and prevent scale. When you add things like an additional router or an additional repeater, you're adding points of failure, but you're also adding a cost center. If the landlord has 100,000 units, you're adding a cost center times 100,000 and your ROI is going to get destroyed. So the challenge of retrofit is that we have to get back into the building fabric. We have to do it easily, we have to do it simply, and we have to maintain a very flat architecture. And sometimes the sensors are required to be passive, just collecting data is sufficient. But other times they're going to require activity. They're going to need to actuate something within the building in order to complete the circle. And that's going to need your software applications. And all of those outcomes, the compliance or the non-compliance, the passing or the failing, have to be available to the client. The same data has to satisfy the demands of our multiple teams. Our development team who are doing new buildings need to be able to see the data and hand over the building. Asset management or facilities management, who will maintain it for 50 years, have to see the data, and it has to go into their own system for asset management and for jobs tracking. And then the compliance department, who cover legal compliances across the entire company, also need to pick up the information into their systems. That could be 3 different softwares and 3 different routes for the same data in order to make sure that you actually achieve what you promised to do for the business. Taking all of that into account, we have a very complex definition of what a smart compliant building looks like. Smart is automated. It's a closed loop system that can sense what needs to be sensed, but act within the building in order to achieve the legal requirements, say conducting testing or reporting the results of those tests without in-person intervention. This is critical because if you retain as much people as you have, you lose ROI. Smart means coverage. It means every building in the estate is covered for network connection. Otherwise, there's limited value creation among those that are covered, and you still have the physical inspections in locations that aren't. And smart critically means pliable data. Data needs to fit multiple shapes within the organization. It has to go into the existing multiple business channels and processes. It has to play nice with what they've already been doing, and it has to automate for each team discreetly. So perhaps it's helpful if I take this just to identify an example. Let's look at a project that we've done for emergency lighting. So our client is a large social landlord, a housing authority, 5,000 or so units and a large provincial footprint. They want to automate emergency lighting because it makes sense. They do 12 annual testing inspections every year on every light. They have 2,500 lights in their system. So that's an awful lot of testing and inspecting that's going on every year. And it's spread out across the geography. So the cost is quite high. Their goal is not to diminish safety. The goal is end-to-end reporting that maintains the level of care and improves the quality and safety. So when a unit fails, the team know, and they fulfill their duty legally to repair it. And when the unit is repaired, the compliance team know. and they can download and export their testing records on a monthly basis and add it to their legal reports. So we visualize this process of moving from what is in red, the existing inspection process, where a team visits a site, it visually inspects and triggers a test within an emergency lighting system. It issues written reports of the results of that inspection. Data entry is reviewed against compliance obligations. And at the final steps, permission or purchase orders are issued for repairs to be conducted. These are 7 steps of manual compliance, all of which are human intervention. What we've developed in partnership with this client is an automated approach where our sensor does the testing, receiving downlinks over the network, executes the test on the DALI bus, puts the data back to the cloud, where our engine manages the compliance checking. And so the only physical intervention comes when failure or defect is detected and repairs have to be carried out. So 12 inspections become maybe 1 per year. So you can see that closing the loop delivers huge value for the client. But the bottlenecks continue because the client has a spread. The spread of buildings across the province means that every emergency light within their catchment area needs to get online in order to make viable the automation. The second bottleneck is retrofit. This client has been in existence for a long time. Buildings date from the 1900s through to today, and they're messy. No building is perfect when you're retrofitting, but you can't be expecting to go in and fully rewire a place for control retrospectively. The costs are too high. So we have to fit over the existing building fabric really simply for every building. And then we have to be pliable. So the data that comes back once we're executing test automation has to go, as I say, to assets, to compliance, to new development. And each of them has to see it within their existing system because lots of other stuff happens in this business and they expect to see our info alongside all of the other critical business information. So we think, great, we think we can still help. We can overcome these challenges. Let's do this together. And then the client asks a really, really tough question. And this is what lies at the heart of compliance for any operator in smart buildings. What happens when we add water? We're an emergency lighting business. What do you mean? We also want to manage our water system. We'd like this automation and we want to look for scald alerts and Legionella compliance in a similar way because we send people out to certain places regularly. Let's see what happens if we can do both. This is a huge challenge for us. Now we're looking at installing a complete nervous system in a building, 5,000 buildings. We need to look at critical fire safety, emergency lighting, and we need to look at water. And in time, we might look at smoke detection, or we might have to look at energy use because those reporting obligations are only increasing. So we can get dedicated vertical solutions to solve each problem. We can go to the market and we can find a good emergency lighting product that works with just emergency lights. And we can find a good water product that works with just water, but they are mostly closed. And so to solve the problem that they solve, the data doesn't leave the sandbox. Sometimes it doesn't even leave the building. You need to download it on a manual visit, which defeats the purpose. Others might require a Wi-Fi access point in each location, which our clients are not in a position to provide. Or it might need a SIM card enabled gateway, one for each of the 5,000 blocks that we're looking at retrofitting. So that's a chunky addition to the project cost. None of this scales, and it puts the landlord off doing IoT full stop because all of a sudden the value becomes messy and gray and convoluted. So we can only scale IoT through an agreed set of principles, an agreed language between devices, where the parts of the nervous system, our emergency lighting, somebody else's water, are able to speak clearly with the brain, with the clearinghouse for information that needs to be in place for a body of this size. We need a platform that supports the customer getting their data on an ongoing basis from a variety of devices, because ultimately the customer is giving legal assurances that work is being done, and the work is being done by these sensors. And so visibility, transparency, and accountability are critical. Everything has to talk to each other. Everything has to be inspectable. And it needs to be lightweight. It needs to get online simply. It needs to go into a building really easily. So we're here at the middle of this project and we're thinking, how are we going to resolve these competing challenges to deliver really high quality compliance for the customer? And really, it's LoRaWAN to the rescue, because to execute a project now that's in this level of complexity, we have to address a technical challenge. There's multiple sensing requirements within the building and thousands of buildings to monitor. But we know that this is an engineering problem and we can solve it. We have to be aware of future sensing needs, some of which are not known, and they have to be catered for somehow or available to be included. But we also have a deep commercial challenge. Multiple teams within our customer's business require the same data, but in different places. And we need to be certain that that data can keep moving without interrupting critical services elsewhere. So we need to do that without NRE or fudges or unsupportable things that we do just to get the project to work. And so here's where you have LoRaWAN helping us to do this. Critical to overcoming the challenge of delivering coverage to the 5,000 buildings in the estate. We know that we can increase the density of the network, and where collaboration and public networks are in place, we can ensure that there is sufficient coverage for an LPWAN in each building to get every sensor online. So it clears that deck. But then the availability of retrofit-friendly sensors on this protocol ensures that we can keep adding required sensing and automation to this project and to this estate, so the buildings begin to report on themselves. But from fire or from water or from building condition, it appears very difficult to do from a silo. LoRaWAN enables it to be done all together. Things are grouped into the network server, things stack, and forwarded to where they need to go. A portion can go to our compliance platform, so we can generate the compliance reporting and the test management. A portion, the required data, goes to the CAFM system to manage the passing, failing, and the building condition. And it might also go to the jobs management so that they can expect a technician to turn up to repair whatever is not working. All of this is made possible through the LoRaWAN stack. And it's made possible to say yes to the client. We can go back and say, in the first instance, take our safe facility, LoRaWAN, and DALI emergency lighting. We can focus on delivering a best-in-class DALI emergency lighting controller. And using LoRaWAN, we know that our client can adopt it without worrying that they are stuck within a single vertical and have to keep bolting on different silos every time they want to solve a problem. We focus because we know LoRaWAN would allow us to integrate other devices when the client required it. And that's exactly what happened. In this particular use case, we go to the client and say, okay, let's use LoRaWAN and temperature for Legionella, and you have a dual use case matching your requirements. All of it seamlessly retrofittable, all of it using the combined architectures of your LoRaWAN and your network server, data traveling to where it needs to go, and your compliance tracked by our dedicated safe facility platform. Ultimately, what we do is we reduce 60,000 inspection visits a year, maybe 70,000, into the low thousands for repairs, 1,000 to 2,000 a year. The significance of that is that building quality improves. Man hours are freed up to attend to repairs that are critical and important. Building safety improves. Tenants are living in a much more surefied location. And data quality and audit improves. The client is able to prove to everybody and every regulator that they are doing what they're legally obliged to do, and more. So in order to overcome the challenges of compliance without being afraid of what any particular team is trying to comply with, we were in no position to do it without the existence of the LoRaWAN stack to help us. And we were happy to share more detail on our experiences with anyone who's wishes at the Q&A, or you can email us or me for more information. I'm happy to help. Thank you very much for your time today, and it's been great talking to you. Looking forward to the rest of the session.